Welcome students. I'm Dr. Sonu Shiva, Associate Professor, Department of English, Government Dungar College, Bikaner. This session is for MA final year English literature students who have opted for New Literatures in English paper, which is 8th A. And in this session, we'll be dealing with Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis, just an introduction to this work. If you look at the story, Metamorphosis is a story of a young man, and strangely you see that he is transformed overnight into a giant beetle-like insect, and he becomes an object of disgrace to his family, an outsider in his own home, a quintessentially alienated man, a harrowing, though absurdly comic, meditation on human feelings of inadequacy, guilt, and isolation. So this work has this work is dealing with all these human feelings of alienation, of inadequacy, guilt, and isolation. The Metamorphosis has taken its place as one of the most widely read and influential works of 20th century fiction. This Metamorphosis belongs to the category of novella, and it is widely read as a 20th century fiction. As W.H. Auden wrote, Kafka is important to us because his predicament is the predicament of modern man. So you find the reflection of modern man in the characters of Metamorphosis. If you look at what type of work it is in a nutshell, there are certain points that are going to give you a general idea about this work. It comes into the category of a novella, which is larger than a short story, but it is much more shorter, you can say, to a novel. The genre is absurdism, and this is a movement in which you find that it's said that the world is all chaotic and irrational, and any attempt to put order into this universe is going to fail. So this belongs to this works belong to this genre. The language is German. It was later translated into English. Time and place written is Prague, 1912. The date of first publication is 1915. The narrator of this novella is an anonymous figure who recounts the events of the story in a flat, and the tone is neutral one. If you look at the point of view, the narrator speaks exclusively in third person, focusing primarily on the thoughts, feelings, and actions of Gregor Samsa, and Gregor Samsa is the main character of this novella. The narrator only describes events that Gregor sees, hears, remembers, or imagines from the actions around him. So it's like he's talking about all the inner world of Gregor Samsa. Tone. The narrator tone is flat and unchanging, describing even the most outlandish events in a neutral fashion. So the tone is moreover neutral. The tense which is used in writing this novella is a past tense. If you look at the setting, time is unspecified, though references to trains and streetcars suggest the late 19th century or early 20th century. So with these references, you can guess that perhaps the time is from late 19th century or early 20th century. Setting, this whole event takes place at Samsa's family's apartment in an unspecified city. The name of the city is not known to the readers. Protagonist is Gregor Samsa. Looking at the conflict in this novella, the major conflict of this work is that Gregor Samsa struggles to reconcile his humanity with the transformation into a giant bug. So this is the conflict, that he is transformed into a giant insect, and he is somewhere trying to reconcile himself to the humanity, to the world outside. The rising action is when Gregor Samsa wakes up inexplicably transformed into a giant bug. He must handle the consequences in terms of his understanding of himself and his relationship with the family. The climax of the story reaches when he is unable to bear the thought that all evidence of his human life will be removed from his room. So his room is all changed for his living as an insect. He clings to the picture of a woman in furs, startling Grete and the mother and leading the father to attack him. So this is the climax of this novella. The following action happens when Gregor is injured in the father's attack. Slowly he weakens down, venturing out of his room once more to hear Gret play the violin and dying shortly thereafter. So there's a sad ending where you find that Gregor Samsa dies. So these are the major proceedings of the conflict. If you look at this as a novella, so just to understand what a novella is, the Metamorphosis is generally assigned to the category of fiction known as novella, novelette, or short novel. Novellas are longer and more complex than short stories, but shorter and simpler than novels. As we talked that they are shorter and simple in comparison to novel, but they are longer and complex than short stories. They are somewhere in middle of the short stories and novels. Short stories usually contain one major conflict, focus on one major character, and develop one major theme, whereas novel present a much larger fictional world with many characters and episodes. And you find that novel is somewhere in between. It is usually focused on limited number of characters and relatively short period of time and a single chain of events. The novella form has attracted many of the greatest writers, and other writers who have written novellas are among them the best known are novellas by Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, and Henry James. Kafka and isms. Franz Kafka and isms. Kafka fiction is so rich and ambiguous that his short stories and novels can be interpreted in many different ways. So there are many isms that are related to Kafka's works. Because of these different interpretations, his work has been adopted by different schools of critics, which we are going to deal one by one, and specially appropriate to their beliefs and theories. Ultimately, no one way of interpreting Kafka seems broad enough to stand alone. The early 19th century movement known as Expressionism, this was based on the belief that inner reality or a person's thoughts and feelings are more important than objective reality. So this school of thought thinks that the inner feelings of any human being are more important than the outside world. In short, the response of an individual is more important than the object or situation that causes the response. So these isms, they can be used to interpret Kafka's Metamorphosis. These expressionist painters and writers and other artists, what happens in this is that they tend to portray the inner reality through the use of symbolic rather than realistic characters, exaggeration, distortion, nightmarish imagery, and fantasy. The second one is surrealism, that claims Kafka as one of its own. Surrealism or superrealism, it developed in France in early 1900 as a reaction to realism and stress over the power of imagination and dreams over conscious control. Surrealist painters like Salvador Dali, they depict objects as they could never appear in reality. So this is surrealism, which is also used for interpretation of Kafka. Another philosophical movement is the artistic movement is existentialism. It has its modern roots in France and Germany, and although it dates to early to 1800, existentialism gained its most popular form in the writings of French writers such as Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus in the years following World War II. While existentialism has many different forms, one of its most important elements is the belief that people are created by experiences they undergo. It is action and making choices that gives life meaning. Many existentialists did not believe in God, but rather felt that human beings were free to make their own moral choices in life. So this is another way of thinking, and this can also be employed in interpretation of Kafka. And one final movement that has claimed Kafka is Freudianism, a theory of psychology based on ideas of Austrian psychologist Sigmund Freud. The Freud believed that every human action is influenced by unconscious mind. Early experiences, such as one's relationship with one's father, have a profound effect on the development of the unconscious. And you find here that Kafka's complex relationship with his own father and the ways in which he addressed their strained relationship in his fiction have especially appealed to Freudianists. If you look at the style of Metamorphosis, Kafka's narrative point of view in Metamorphosis is called limited third person. He tells us Gregor's thoughts and feelings only. We do not learn what the other characters are thinking or feeling unless they show us by their words or action. In fact, much of the novella is a kind of interior monologue of Gregor's thoughts. So it's all about how this character, Gregor, what he feels, what he is experiencing, and he's trying to narrate his experiences, and so the style is interior monologue, and his interior feelings and thoughts are told by the narrator. This style has the effect of making Gregor's inner reality seem most important than what actually occurs in the world around him. So that feeling of alienation, that feeling of guilt, whatever is happening in his inside world, that is very important in what actually is happening all around him. So the style which Kafka has chosen is interior monologue in this work. This was a general introduction of Metamorphosis, where you come to know about the conflicts, where you come to know about the isms, that how this work can be interpreted in so many different ways, and the style which writer has chosen to uh, express or write this work. Thanks for now. We'll continue in the next session.